Okay, I see our participants joining us in our second to last session of the afternoon. It's been a wonderful day, lots of great content, lots of great insights, and it's my pleasure. My name is Michelle Brown. I'm the Chief Growth and Innovation Officer here at MACPA, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome our speaker, Justin Marcus, for our session on the future of talent acquisition, how AI is transforming recruiting in accounting and finance. So Justin is the CEO of Big Four Talent. He brings a wealth of industry knowledge from his time at a top-tier Fortune 500 recruiting firm to founding and running Gratis Staffing, a direct hire staffing company based in Maryland. He's been involved in helping over 500 finance and accounting candidates land new positions and is now dedicated to making Big Four Talent a key player in the recruitment field here in Maryland and beyond. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you having me. Thank you for the introduction, Michelle. And it's an honor to be speaking really with this group of accomplished professionals. There's a lot of exciting changes that are happening right now in the world of accounting and the recruitment for accountants, and hope to really leave everybody with some actionable insights that you could take back to your work here. Little bit about myself, as Michelle mentioned, I was actually a finance major up at Towson University. Did a little stint in wealth management. I thought I wanted to go down the corporate finance route. So I kept seeing jobs posted through a company, Robert Half, and ended up applying, and they interviewed me and convinced me to go and work there for them internally. And so I ended up working with them in Bethesda location for Montgomery County office, placing basically direct hire finance and accounting folks. And, a lot of the work, pretty much senior accountant level, all the way up to CFO level at companies that range from probably 5 million a year in annual revenue up through, I think the largest company I'd worked with was about 32, 33 billion. So after 6 years there, I left. I started my own firm, like she had mentioned, Gratis Staffing, basically handling very similar direct hire finance and accounting permanent placement work. And that was founded in early 2019, and we've grown the business. Really, just a handful of us. We're very specialized finance and accounting. Most of our work is here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We do work kind of up and down East Coast, though, as we've got some clients that are large and global. And so, anyways, again, it's a pleasure to talk here, and appreciate you guys having me. Recently, a couple years ago, we started the implementation of a platform called Big Four Talent, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But the idea behind it is to sort of help companies find candidates that have Big Four experience quickly without needing to pay the crazy high recruiting fees that most agencies are charging right now. So again, that's a little bit about myself. And apologize, I just shared that without realizing. So why talent acquisition matters? I wanted to start by talking about a team that really has nothing to do with accounting. Stick with me here, but it's close to home. So last year, Washington Commanders had a really rough season. So they won only 4 games out of 17. I'm not sure if there's more Ravens fans on here. I like them a lot as well. But anyways, Commanders last year, they only won 4 games out of 17, which, isn't great, right? But this year, everything changed when Dan Snyder sold the team. New ownership came in and completely overhauled the team. So there's a new general manager, new head coach, new players. And fast forward just the very next year, this year, and they've more than doubled their wins with 3 more games to go, which was an absolute turnaround. So why? Well, they focused on upgrading their team. And it's really the perfect example, very relevant example to show that having the right people in the right roles can transform any organization, whether it's a sports team or, your accounting department. So studies also back this up quite a bit. There was a report from Vital Smarts, which found that top performers are 3 times more valuable than the average employee. They account for 61% of a team's overall productivity. So the talent, having the right talent, really, it's not just nice to have, it's really the key to success in a lot of areas. And I think anybody that's a sports fan can tell when there's a top performer on the team. Generally, they say that a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So that's it's very, very true. The market right now for accounting professionals, it's exciting. So the challenge that we're facing, the accounting professional, is in the middle of a talent crunch right now, as you all may very well be aware of. Numbers are very sobering. There's a shortage of about 340,000 accounting professionals in the U.S. It's not just a statistic; it's a reality that firms are grappling with every single day. And what's really causing this? Um, First of all, there's a decline in new talent. So AICPA had a 2021 report that revealed a 4% decline in accounting bachelor's degrees and about a 6% decline in master's degrees compared to the previous survey. And another one, here's a big one: the number of CPA candidates actually dropped by 17% between 2019 and 2022. So clearly, fewer people are choosing this path. Same time, our age force is aging. 3/4 of CPAs, they say, are going to retire or be eligible for retiring in the next 15 years, which is leaving a massive gap for firms to fill. And the big picture is the demand is outpacing the supply. U.S. job market for accountants and auditors is expected to grow 7% through 2030, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But right now, roughly 62% of finance departments are struggling to fill open roles. So that's just here in the US. The demand for accountants globally has quadrupled in 2024, especially in specific niches like AI, blockchain, regulatory compliance, and ESG reporting. Businesses need professionals who really not only understand the numbers, but also have the skills to adapt to these different emerging trends. So, what does this mean for you, for us? Is the gap creates an opportunity and a challenge. Accounting professionals are being pulled into different, increasingly complex roles, and it might be navigating SEC climate disclosures, or staying on top of GDPR and CCPA privacy laws, even tackling different digital transformations. Um, Demand is definitely shifting to a new kind of accountant. Um, with all this change, there's a new wave of roles that are popping up and really expanding quickly in finance and accounting. It's no longer just tax and audit. Data analytics specialists, so finance teams are looking to advance analytics to drive better decisions. It's nearly 7 out of 10 people that plan on increasing, or companies that plan on increasing their use of these tools in the next 2 years, according to Deloitte. Companies are adopting ESG frameworks, which increased last year by 35% alone. PwC survey showed that 52% of financial services firms are already investing in blockchain. So not in 5 years, but right now, which is creating a spike in demand for accountants who can keep up. Not to mention, Gartner predicts that by 2025, 80% of routine accounting work is going to be automated. Not eliminated, automated, which basically leaves, us professionals more time to focus on these really high value tasks. I've seen quite a few companies, particularly at the 5+ billion-dollar level, outsource their accounting. And what generally happens is they try to outsource everything, and then they tend to come back internally, domestically, for certain specific roles, which they feel like are better handled in house here. So the upside is the roles come with more opportunities for creative problem solving and strategy, which makes them hopefully more exciting. But the downside is firms need to rethink how do they recruit for these very specialized roles. So speaking of AI, it's changing everything in hiring as well. I'll admit AI is not perfect. You guys probably have seen that. Candidates still want that human touch when they're interviewing, but in the earlier stage, it's a game changer. The first thing is it can speed up resume screening. AI can have different algorithms or things that it's looking for when sifting through resumes, hundreds of resumes in a fraction of a time, looking for different keywords. I think last year, LinkedIn reported that AI reduced the average hiring time by 35%. Can also improve diversity. So there's tools like Textio and Talvista, which analyze job descriptions specifically and make sure that they're geared toward attracting diverse audiences. So just tweaking the language a little bit can make a post significantly more inclusive. And the last is AI can help with different hiring trends, at least analyzing it. So it can help firms understand different salary expectations, candidate behaviors, even market trends like inflation or job hopping patterns. So IT can take a lot of the heavy lifting off of recruitment teams, which free up quite a bit of time for more personalized interactions. Other technologies are also creating more ways to improve hiring. Oops. So Eightfold AI is one. It basically tries to match candidates to jobs based on their skills. So I've heard it's okay. Pay scale, and I think I'd imagine these are probably going to get better with time. But pay scale, it provides real time salary insights. So companies are offering competitive packages. There's different reporting organizations out there. Big4transparency.com is one of them, where you can you're able to see what people are making given their level. Most of that is a broad sort of nationwide, or I think Big Four Transparency is even North American wide because it includes Canada. But there's different technology, obviously, that can speed up quite a bit. LinkedIn is a very obvious one. Most companies are using LinkedIn regularly. If you're not already leveraging it for hiring, then you're missing out. There's a few tips though to make sure that you're sort of maximizing your exposure. The first is making sure your company page is active, but also your personal page is active. Sharing different thought leadership and celebrating the company or different departmental wins, which make your firm or department more attractive to these job seekers. There's different paid versions of LinkedIn, like Navigator or Recruiter Lite, which kind of allows you to zero in on different certifications or locations or again keywords. You can get really fancy with them with like Boolean string searches. But the biggest thing though, I think with LinkedIn is sort of posting consistently. So posting more is going to gain visibility, leading to more interest from candidates. Candidates are interested in people that have something to say. And personally, I found polls are a fantastic way to kind of learn from the market while also broadening the reach. And LinkedIn's algorithms, they promote active profiles. So staying consistent here really pays off. So I think recruiters with visible profiles, it said, gets 3 times the engagement that others do. But ultimately, LinkedIn, similar to other online marketplaces when it comes to recruiting, it's kind of the spray and pray method. Companies either they'll post a job and hope for great talent, or have their internal teams reach out to passive seekers, and usually get a fairly low response rate from great talent. One thing we realized is companies over about 50 million or so a year in revenue, they often want to hire candidates that have experience in one of the big four, mostly for audit, tax, financial reporting, compliance, transactional transaction advisory, um, with M&A support, investor relations, technical accounting, and FP&A. Um, Typical response rates from accounting and finance candidates around the board is about 13%, and Big Four experience candidates is somewhere around 3%, just because they're inundated with messages from recruiters, and about 98% of the roles are irrelevant to what they're looking for. So it's very, very interesting. That kind of drives us to introducing Big Four talent. So we took a different approach to recruiting, and because we're able to get very highly tailored um, with the roles that we're sharing with these candidates they all have Big Four experience. We've been able to get a response rate of about 20% from them. So, good way to think of it is kind of like a modern matchmaking. We've been compared to like a dating site. So, the way it works is companies, they can basically create a free account. They input the specific details about the role, responsibilities, interview logistics, things like that. So they create a position, and obviously they've got to sign our agreement. But then when there's a dual match between what those candidates want and what employers are looking for, the candidates receive those tailored job opportunities. They can kind of swipe on them, and if they're interested, they accept. They provide availability for an interview, and that way, when employers first review that candidate's profile and schedule a meeting, they're able to do that immediately as opposed to sort of waiting to go back and forth. So, big picture benefits candidates, they save a little over 200 minutes of job searching. Plus, they're not receiving the 30 plus irrelevant job opportunities that they generally get in their LinkedIn inbox every day. And from an employer standpoint, we're able to cut down time to fill for roles by over 4 days, plus save over $10,000 per hire compared to the traditional recruitment agencies, because things are automated, all while finding basically the most sought after candidates in accounting. We do have a plan, big picture, to open up sort of um, a CPA sector of it, but so non Big Four, but for right now, Big Four has been a very highly sought after one from employers. So to wrap up, this is just kind of a picture of what it looks like taking a peek at candidate's background. So Jim Carey, he's kind of a funny guy, technical accounting manager. He's got a few years of experience working for UI up to senior audit associate, and then technical accounting manager. And it just is very transparent, sort of what size companies they've worked for, and what their focus has been. So to wrap up, here's some hiring tips that we can put into action today. The first one is be very specific in your job descriptions about the skills and perks. Really, some just like candidates, sometimes candidates build out resumes where they're just listing what they had done or their skills in a role. And I think it's important for candidates to recognize that a resume is a marketing tool. And so, more than just writing what your skills are, it's very important to write what you had actually accomplished in each role. So if it's a generic sort of month end close accountant, maybe you close the month out 3 days faster by implementing certain process improvements, or, maybe implemented a procure to pay system like, a Coupa, and sort of streamline the process and we're able to reduce, salary expenses and headcount. Right. So there's a very similar correlation with job descriptions. Job descriptions are not just to write what the person's going to be doing, although that's important, but it's also very important to list why somebody should leave their job that they're happy in now to come and work with you guys in this sort of role. So, is there room for growth? How so? What sort of timeline? Who are they? What is that next role look like for them? How has the company been growing over the years? Where do the opportunities lie? And it's more than pizza on Fridays. Candidates, I've never seen a market like this where candidates are extremely sensitive to certain aspects in their job search. For example, when COVID hit, everybody was working 100% remote. And then now you started to see this sort of trend where companies are wanting to bring back employees a little bit more often inside. And you're seeing a lot of candidates call placement agencies to look out for different positions that aren't 4 days a week in office or 5 days a week in office. So um, candidates want to know, what the team dynamics look like, who they're going to be reporting to, how many people are in the department, and if it's 50 people in the accounting department, well, how many are in audit? How many are in tax? How many are in each sort of sector or vertical, if you will, in accounting? That way, they can understand, if they're not only growing horizontally or vertically, they can also grow horizontally and sort of learn and leverage different skill sets that they can learn there. Transparency also wins. I've got some interesting views on this, but um, you definitely need to set a salary range. Make sure that it's informed by market data. So too vague and candidates are going to lose trust. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword because I've worked with companies that, they say 250 is the top end, not a dime higher. And then you present an incredible candidate coming out of their direct competitor that's at 270, and all of a sudden they can get to 275. So um, I know it depends on experience, but you can always err on the side of um, reeling it back for that right person. Not to mention asking for salary history. I just posted on this. Um, most companies are aware that you can't ask what somebody's salary history is, but you are able to ask what somebody is looking for, targeting sort of in their next role. So it's always an interesting conversation when that comes up, but recruitment teams can definitely use their knowledge and their experience to sort of find the best middle ground for both parties. So also you want to prioritize, experience with these hiring practices. You want to engage personally with them. You know, AI, as we mentioned, it's a great tool, but ultimately people are going to work with people. And so, you know, I know accounting can be um, some parts or aspects of accounting can seem, mundane or like you're doing, very similar work and your head is focused in the books. Um, but there are aspects of accounting where it's not. Operational accounting, you're dealing with people all the time. And when new candidates start in a position, they're going to want to know who the team that they're working with is and what they're like, how long they've been there, what their personalities, typically are. Um, so whether or not you hire them, they'll at least at that point leave with a good impression of your brand, and who knows where you're both going to be, 10 years down the road. So you can review your processes. What worked 5 years ago with hiring is definitely not going to work right now. You want to monitor your different hiring metrics. You want to look at how long is it taking to fill a role. You want to look at, um, you know, how long those candidates that you're hiring end up working out long term. If they leave in a quick period of time, you want to do a really good job of um, interviewing them during the exit interview. So there's a lot of retention data that we can gather both in the interview process as well as the exit interview, obviously. But what I'll say is, you definitely want to be open to adopting new tools and methods. I think Chat GPT has been an unbelievable addition to writing job descriptions, but you don't want to just ask Chat GPT to write it and then post it without having any sort of say about who your company is, who you are, and even the percentages of what focus is going to be or what the focus is going to be in the role. We've seen jobs where they've had, maybe it's a smaller company, and so Um, 50% of the role is month end close, 40% of it is, financial reporting, and then 5% of it is tax. Well, if those are just listed sort of generically, a candidate might think, well, I don't really want to do tax. I used to do tax before, and they might not realize that there's actually someone else in tax, but you're kind of just giving them some of the data for it, right? Um, that's a lot to take in, I know, but hope that everyone's kind of walking away with practical solutions and maybe some inspiration to rethink hiring at firms. Talent acquisition's a lot more than just filling seats. It's about building teams that's going to keep your organization thriving for years to come. And after all, with football, accounting, or really any field, success always comes down to building a winning team. You just need the right players on the field. So um, thank you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions. We can kind of go through them right now if that makes sense. There's time.
We have plenty of time. Thank you so much, Justin. So many great insights and things to consider. And I love the analogy with the football team. That really, really hits home. All right, let me read. We have a couple questions in the chat, and I have a couple myself. So, but if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. So the first one is from Rohan. He asks about, does it make sense to apply for jobs on LinkedIn, particularly when we see over 100 applicants? I've even seen cases of thousands of applicants. So do you have any advice for that, or?
Sure. Yeah. Big picture, I would encourage it, but I wouldn't just stop with applying. So back in 2019, when I thought I was going to go into corporate America and the recruitment world there, I applied to jobs, but then I also made a point to connect with the direct hiring manager, connect with talent acquisition team on LinkedIn and write very personalized emails to them. So I think it does make sense. We post jobs all the time, and often we'll have 200 plus applicants. I will say, the last job I posted, it was fully remote. It was 600 applicants. I went through probably 450 of them, and I'm a fairly busy person, so often your information will get looked at. Um, but I do think it helps the case when you can do other forms of outreach to their team, see who that's connected to them as well, or connected to anybody else that works there. Referrals, networking. That's going to be a big area to help you land your next role.
Great advice. So anything to get yourself noticed. A follow-up question that I had, which was one of my questions, is you talked a little bit about this earlier about how companies are using AI to kind of weed out certain resumes, good or bad. Do you have any advice on how to make your resume AI proof and make it noticed, I guess, by the bot or whatever tool they're using?
Yeah, great question. There's a couple different ways that you could do this. I'm sure there are videos. My dog is doing backflips in the background. There's different videos of people that will take the most common keywords and they'll put them in the very bottom of the resume, and they'll put it in white font, so it matches and no one can see there. I'm not quite sure that that's the best route, or maybe even the most ethical route, particularly if they haven't worked on those skill sets or focuses or software. I think the better option would be to do a little bit of research with the company and the job, and maybe you could use AI, plug in the job description really fast, and ask it to help tailor your resume in an honest and ethical way. Again, give it the bullet points that or the value add that you had at your previous companies, and maybe ask AI how you can sort of cross leverage your experience with some of the things on the job description that you haven't done. I think a big thing that is happening is um, there's a lot of candidates. The reason why you see 600 candidates posted or applying to a job is most of the candidates, they're not really qualified for the role in some fashion. So I think that the best way to sort of um, even just stand out as a regular person or a qualified candidate is to be honest and upfront about what you've done. And you wouldn't know it, but AI actually is. eh, I haven't seen yet a lot of companies use it for the filtering. I know that it's probably coming, and there's different applicant tracking systems that are starting to implement it, correctly. Um, but I think that we're probably still another 3 to 5 years out before it takes over being able to look at a resume and say, hey, this candidate is fully qualified. Only because there's a lot of different paths that can get you to point B, right? There's even people in public accounting. Most of the time, they'll focus on so much they don't they don't know what to put fully on their resume to make sure that it lines up because they've handled so much with such a diverse clientele, both in terms of industry as well as revenue range. Um, so, sorry, that's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I think the best way to try to stand out and avoid the AI filtering is to have a personal connection. You know, pick up the phone, and if I was looking for a role, I'd pick up the phone, I'd call into the company, and I'd ask for, whoever the hiring manager is, and just call and introduce yourself or leave a voicemail, and um, it doesn't have to necessarily come across as that you're needy for a role. It can come across, hey, this is Justin Marcus. I noticed that you guys had a role, and I'm not necessarily out here applying to 200 jobs a day, but this role struck my curiosity because I've got experience in software as a service company, and I saw that you guys do a lot of that. You're growing fast. It looked really intriguing, so I'd love to have a quick high level conversation. By the way, I had already applied, 3 days ago.
That's great. Great advice and a great way to personalize your experience and get noticed. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but great advice. All right, we have a question from Matt. It says, sounds like the tide is turning to return to the office 4 to 5 days a week. It doesn't sound like candidates are on board. Do you think that'll shift in 2025, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Matt, I would love you to elaborate on the question. Do I think that companies are going to change wanting people in office 4 or 5 days a week, or do I think that candidates are going to all of a sudden start coming on board, or a little bit of both? Uh, I could answer it the way I think the question is, which is, do I think that candidates are on board or going to start becoming on board to working in person 4 or 5 days a week? And my answer to that is going to be it depends on the vertical, and accounting and finance um, is one of those areas where it's very challenging to find candidates. And um, I don't think we're in the same market where a company like I work with some real estate and construction firms, and they say, well, because we've got property managers on site 5 days a week, we need everybody in the office on site 5 days a week. And I understand that line of thinking, wanting to be fair. Unfortunately, candidates that are in finance and accounting are going to gravitate to other companies that um, are allowing more flexibility or more remote work. So I don't think it's going to change very quickly. Um, the other thing is, from an economic standpoint, we're seeing cycles of increased hiring right now. So um, I know if there's increased hiring right now, just from doing this over a decade, that there's likely going to be significant increased hiring between January and April timeframe. And so when there's that much of an increase of hiring, um, it's a supply demand thing where the demand is significantly higher, candidates supply is lower, and so I think companies are going to need to likely be flexible with certain verticals with inside of their company.
Great response. All right, we have a question next from Paul. Have you had candidates that want to come into the potential employer and meet all day and then be taken out to dinner that evening by the owner and key management before deciding upon accepting the job offer? Seems like a bonding strategy. Have you ever heard?
Yeah, I have. I have. That seems a little excessive, but I have had I have had and thought that a great interview process was more than just drilling somebody about, what their background is and telling them about the role. I think it does say a lot in in interviews with the finalist when you can break bread and talk to someone, and kind of have them drop their guard a little bit, and also have you as an employer drop your guard down a little bit. You can really get to know people better. Not to mention, there's a lot of politics in interviewing. You can't ask the same questions that um, are important to, I think, the kind of person, or at least where they are in their life, that tend to come out in dinner or over lunch or over coffee or something. I've got two boys. I've got a 6-year old and a 3-year old, and over an interview that likely wouldn't come out. But it's an opportunity to bond. It's an opportunity to learn more about the other person outside of just what their skill set. You can learn about what drives them. You can learn about some of the challenges that they might be facing. Um, that way, you get a more broad perspective when you start, either as a candidate, really, or an employer. If somebody's got some personal things going on, yeah, it definitely helps build the relationship. Now, I'm not one of these guys where, there's a lot of like, my employees are my family. Now, I get it. Business is business at the end of the day, and companies need to earn a profit. But that doesn't mean that you need to take the human out of the equation, right? There's always You can still build great relationships and earn a profit, right? So I don't know. That's kind of my high level. I don't know if I even answered your question fully. I think I did. I have seen it happen all day plus a dinner. I think that's a little excessive on the same day. I mean, for me, that would be a lot with, family commitments and things like that. But um, I did want to share on that note. I think that this could be a little bit helpful. Um, Given the supply demand that we were talking about, as an employer, one of the things that we're often coaching employers on is reducing the amount of interviews that are being or taking place in order to hire a candidate. And it doesn't mean that you need to reduce the amount of eyes that are on that person or the amount of conversations that are had. I think consolidating is a big one. And yes, everyone says, well, our CFO is extremely busy, doesn't have a lot of time. Loop them in with the second one if you feel that confident about the candidate, or consolidate them down to the top two or three um, before that second round. But most employers that are hiring quickly, they're doing so in 2 rounds. Mostly the first round is virtual, and then the second round is in person if it's a local role. And then they're making a decision after, if referencers are involved, then great. I think that's an opportunity to, learn more about the person. Um, but try to consolidate recruitment processes, make it at least seem like you know what you're, you know what you're doing, what you guys are talking about.
Nice. Great answer, great insights. All right, we have a couple more questions to get through. We have 10 minutes. So Tim is asking, it's actually about your services. He's filling out on the Big Four talent portal. He has a starter job. And the question is, do you source starter positions, I guess, or just that experienced talent? So
Sure. So Big Four talent is only for candidate. It's for candidates that have Big Four experience. If you count a 1 year Big Four person as a starter, then I say it could make sense. We have a lot of folks that are 1, 2 year folks on there. If you're looking for an entry level person, then it's not the right platform for that. A better company that could help with that one is Gratis Staffing. We place a lot of entry level folks there. So you could reach out to me. Same email. I'll connect you with one of our team members.
Perfect. All right, a very general question from Tim, another Tim. Are cover letters still necessary? Is it okay to use AI to match up a resume with a job description? Actually, two questions there.
Yeah. Are cover letters still necessary? Some companies will say, absolutely, we're not hiring you unless you have one. In my opinion, I think that's an extremely outdated recruitment process. I think that was a great recruitment process maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So to answer your question, it depends on what company you're applying to. If they're asking you for it, I would think it's important to them, but I don't know. In a job market, if I'm getting other opportunities, I'm um, passing on the ones that make you right for an additional, hour and a half about the role that you might not even have a conversation with them about. And then what was that second part? Is it okay to use AI to match up a resume with a job description? Yeah, yeah. I think as long as it's accurate, if it's ethical, truthful, um, go through it after AI helps you with some of the verbiage, and make sure that it aligns with what your experience is. And I think it's totally fine to do that.
Excellent. All right, next up we have, it looks like more of a comment from Paul. He had a candidate require a $5,000 check before accepting the offer so that the candidate could pay for 2 months of apartment rent. Didn't have any funds apparently and needed the funds before relocating and accepting the offer.
Cool.
Very interesting. Would love to know if he got the job. I mean, that's quite the demand, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so the one analytical side is, if they're in accounting and finance, how are they with their own funds? And which, we used to see a lot of companies do credit checks on folks in accounting and finance. We don't see that as much nowadays, but I would be curious a little bit more, I guess, behind that. And um, the other thing is from the reload standpoint, maybe depends on the level of the role. If they were tied financially, through other sort of commitments. I know you can't really ask all these like very personal questions to the candidates, but um, maybe as an employer, what I would do in that sort of situation is I would say, happy to give you a $5,000 sign on, but we're going to make it, you have to stay 90 days, otherwise you pay it back.
Paul's follow-up was that the candidate was a CFO that stated was almost bankrupt. So that's
Ooh.
really interesting.
I mean, I don't want to judge anybody because everyone's got their own situation. We've got um, both of our kids actually have some medical challenges, and one's hard of hearing, the other's got a congenital heart disease. He just finished his second heart surgery. Such a champion, but I'm not one to dismiss on health related expenses or people's situations because we just don't know what people are going through. But it would definitely raise a yellow flag. I'd be curious to learn a little bit more. Maybe take that person out to lunch.
Mhm. There you go. There you go. Great. Next question. This is from Lauren. This is going back to our, in office versus at home. She's seen where some people want to work from home, but they also want a dedicated workspace or office in that office. Realistically, space-wise, it just doesn't necessarily make sense to offer both. How would you recommend working through that with those who want both, who want that dedicated office space and also work remotely?
I think it depends on the talent pool at that person's level. I think it depends on where they are. And obviously, it's best if you can find several people that can work in an office. We have an office. I've also worked from home, and I could tell you, with with two kids, even though they're in school and daycare, it's tough to really. I'm home now. I see the dog in the back. It's tough to not. get trapped into doing some things, personally or from home. So um, I do see a lot of value in having an office, a dedicated workspace. Um, if, yeah, it's a tough question. It also depends on the confidentiality of the person's work because some of these Reguses, they can offer shared space where it's really not as much of a cost. We've even had some companies that I work with will sort of co-lease or sublease out a small office for another company that is in a non-related industry locally. So I don't know. I think if the market was really tough and I could afford it though, and the person was an amazing fit, there'd have to be a business case to make, if they're going to be more productive because they're in the office, if they have distractions behind them, I'd be curious how much they're working when they're working from home, and um, if the office that you would get, even if it's like a rental office, is close enough, try to encourage them to be in the office more often than from home.
All
It's a
right.
tough situation,
I'm sure it's a case by case, based on the tenant, like you said.
right?
I think we have question here we can end on. This was a direct message over to me. This is a great question because we talked a little about AI and how it can enhance and assist. But if you're reviewing candidates, how do you know? How can you really assess their true ability because of AI and people using it to really enhance their resume? So like, are there any tips and tricks that really you can notice a resume that certainly was written by AI versus not?
I think yeah, I think whenever it sounds like it's not a person, then it's probably AI, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the person doesn't know what they're doing. It just means that probably they had some help. Um, so I think what I would do in that case, if their background looked incredible, you can't really use AI to make up which companies you're working at, So if someone worked at a Google or an Amazon and you're a larger company, then I would still probably give that person an interview, and then I'd ask very targeted behavioral questions about what they've done in situations where they've done it and how it's looked, and get them to describe in detail to me, you know walk me through your process with doing a bank reconciliation, or with closing out the month, or working with a tax team. Talk to me about exactly how it worked. I think some people, when they do interviews, they just get honed in on, especially if they're in a time crunch. They start asking yes or no questions candidates can say yes or no to, and it makes it very challenging to correctly identify their skill set. When you say, "Hey, Michelle, have you ever, booked a journal entry before?" Yes. It's a better question is, Michelle, would you mind sharing with me what it looks like when prepare a journal entry?
Right.
Mhm. Great
Well,
questions. Really appreciate you guys.
amazing questions. You have been a wealth of knowledge and insights and really just getting the gears going into what is possible and what to look for. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure. Sure. Yes, that's important. So my email is justin at big4talent.com, four spelled out. And also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's got content, and we we tend to follow the finance and accounting market pretty closely. But I think mostly we try to offer tips to both candidates and employers on how to best find each other.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here today. Really appreciate everybody participating in this session and the great questions. Thank you again so much for being here, Justin, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time.